Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesday. We're glad you're with us today. It's September 21st, 2022. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. For those people watching on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just put them in the Zoom chat window. For those watching on Facebook, please just put your questions into the comment field. We are monitoring both feeds. We'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Also, if you'd like to network with everybody else who's on the call today, please go ahead and put in your information so that you can network with those people who are on the call. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me in person, I usually have copies with me. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007. I'll tell you about our upcoming program. We have a great program coming up this Friday. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. You'll hear more about that in just a couple of minutes. Well, before we get to our session today, I want to have Walt and talk about the Interview Success Workshop. So good afternoon, Walt.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. So what do I do about interviewing and helping you improve your interviewing skills and confidence for a successful job interview? Well, I have a very informal and free interview success workshop. And what's the workshop part of it? Well, it's a mixture between the interview, the video, the feedback, the coaching, and all of that kind of comes around. And it's very informal in nature. It's to put our learning hat on, not our mock interview hat. Okay, this is not a test or an exam. This is just a process to help us understand how we can sell ourselves and differentiate ourselves positively from other candidates. So what does selling ourselves really mean? Well, it's three parts. It's who we are, what we do, and how we can help. Our soft skills, our soft characteristics. Are we detail-oriented? Are we self-motivated? Those kinds of things. Our personality, how we communicate with each other, etc. What we do, that's our experience. Those are the things that we've done. Those are the things that we've maybe achieved through certification and education. Those hard skills could be included here as well. And then the I help. This is where we take our soft skills and what we've done and combine that to achieve specific results for them. They're always hiring us to accomplish and do something and to provide something to that individual, that department, that manager, and that company. So just how do we do that? Well, that's what we talk about in the interview. Selling, I am, I do, I help. You must be registered to attend. And that QR code that you see on your screen right there will start an email with just a couple of edits in it that you can send to me and say, I'd like to register for the workshop. You can look me up on my About section under Walt Glass on LinkedIn, and it'll tell you more about the details of that, and also give you my Yahoo email address to send a note to. Be glad to have you participate. In our learning experience here, there's really no need for us to have anxiety, stress, heart failure, all these kind of things where our life flashes in front of us. We don't need to have all that stuff and learn at the same time. Why can't we enjoy the learning process? So I love to set an environment of learning and enjoyment while we are learning in the workshop. Therefore, I call it learning without squirming.
Thank you very much, Walt. And let's hear from the PIT crew. Good morning or good afternoon, Ron.
Hello. I just want to reiterate, Walt's class is wonderful. We had an interview last week, and Walt was one of the interviewers, and the other two actually pulled things off their monitors that we've had for 3-4 years that came out of that class. So highly recommend you take Walt's class. Now for the PIT crew, what is our goal? Our goal is to build your confidence so that you can better tell your story during a real interview. We do that by having a bunch of coaches or panelists that have been hiring managers in their career that offer free time to help you do a mock interview, typically in a panel situation. What we ask is that you send us your resume, a job description, prospective times that you may have, and where you are in the interview cycle. So that is kind of what we do. We are always looking for volunteers if you've been a hiring manager from that perspective. We also do a couple of other things. We may do a one-on-one coaching situation, and we also have a one-way video interview that Jeff has set up. So that's what the Dallas Pit Crew is all about. And these sessions are recorded, by the way, and then you're sent the recorded, or actually sent a link to the recording so you can download that.
Great, Ron. Thank you very, very much for those. Ron mentioned the one-way interview. If you'd like to schedule a one-way interview, you can contact Walt Glass or myself, and we will schedule one of those two. We're trying to, since Mark's not with us right now for a little time being, Ron's sort of taking over the Pit Crew. We really appreciate it. I didn't want to throw that on him also. So if you want that one-way interview, you can reach out to Walt or myself. Just remember that one-way interview, that's really weird because it's you talking to the camera all by yourself. There's nobody else around. A question pops up and you have to answer it. So if you want to, you're welcome to do it. Once you do it, we'll send you the link so you can go back and watch it. We'll never watch it. We just want you to sort of be comfortable doing it. So just reach out to Walt or myself. All right, today we don't have a candidate to actually watch a practice interview. So today we're going to be reviewing session number 4, which is all about video interviewing. The two people who are speaking are Mark McDonald, who was leading the practice interview team for many years, and Walt Glass. They put this together right after COVID hit, and they put together a 13-part workshop, which we'll explain at the end. In fact, Mark will talk about it here at the very beginning of the presentation. So this is a pre-recorded session. It's about 45 or 50 minutes long. If you have any questions, please just put them in the chat window. I see some people are already networking and putting their contact information in there. That's great. And we'll get your questions answered for you at the very end.
Video interviewing today. So session number 4 out of 13. And if you're brand new today, Walt and I, we used to do this on face-to-face. When we met face-to-face, we'd have a little education session at the end of the meetings, and they were pretty ad hoc. So we talked about whatever the people who had come to the meeting wanted to ask about. You know, they would ask us questions and we'd provide answers. When we became virtual, Jeff, has these series of topics, one each day of the week, about resumes and LinkedIn and networking. And so interviewing was one of those as well. So Walt and I put together a formal presentation of all the things involved in being a good interviewer and being successful in interviewing. And it turned out to be about 20 hours worth of stuff. So we broke it down into 13 sessions. We can go through the whole series in 1/4 of a year. And so we are on session 4 now. And I just want to give you a little structure, because if there's a particular topic here that you'd like to freshen up on, you can go to the Career USA YouTube channel and take a look at the presentation that we did back in January, February, and March. So we did this exact series the first 3 months of the year. And so the first 5 topics are about preparing to interview, and we're on topic number 4 out of that 5. Then the second group of 5 is about effective interviewing, and you can see some really good things there, demonstrating enthusiasm, how to discuss compensation, what if you're changing careers or industries. So that group of 5 is a really good group. And then the last 3 are kind of advanced topics that build on the previous 10, and but also cover some very important things like target companies and informational interviews, and how do you deal with difficult interviewers. And then my favorite there at the end, which is common mistakes that people make that we see all the time. And so maybe knowing about them will help you avoid them. So that's the whole Pit Crew series. And today's topic is video interviewing, presented by Walt.
So my goodness gracious, we're in a job search, and holy cow, all the stuff we have to learn how to do. We got to figure out what we want to be. We got to figure out how to do resumes, and we got to do LinkedIn stuff. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. I'm putting in staff, and then everybody has opinions on everything, and there's not a book that just tells us the answer. It'd be nice if we could just drive up to the job search building and they got a window and say, I'd like one resume building, some networking, and an interviewing, and a chocolate shake, and just have that handed to us, and we'd walk out and it'd be all there. Okay. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way it is today. And so then along comes COVID, and all it did was accelerate this thing called video interviewing. It's bound to happen, going to occur, but that just gives us one more thing we have to pick up and learn and know how to do and be effective at. Because there's just, let's just face it, people will see things that will cause them not to select us. And some say the pessimistic way is the whole process is one of deselection rather than one of selection. Well, let's stay positive and say, okay, we want to be one amongst the selected. So how can we do that? So today I'm just going to focus on the video part. There'll be a little bit about interviewing, but really on the video part so that we can be effective with using video. And that's quite important. There's a lot of things going on today. What's the challenges? What's the difference? And what are we faced with and challenged to do an effective video interview? Let's see if we can pick up a few tidbits that will help us really come across well in a video interview. Little humor to start the day. So back up a little bit. I know you all are just dying to know this. What's the difference in what is AVI and asynchronous interviews? And so we'll kind of go to the basics. So technologically, there was back in 1992, Microsoft developed a file that would hold both video and audio streams, which is two different methodologies. It's kind of like your phone. You have voice on your phone and you have data on your phone. Lots of times you have voice problems, but when you do texting, it goes through pretty well. And that's because data is handled a lot easier than voice. So it's similar to that if you were trying to compare. So the asynchronous interviews, these one-way deals, which we just love, where they get to ask us questions and we just have to look into the camera and answer. So they record themselves and we record ourselves, and they get to go back and look at us. And so those are the kind of things that are going on. So what's really happened? So COVID-19 has really pushed it forward. We were doomed to go to this way, if that's the way you want to look at video interviews. But as we all, everybody in the interviews, just many say, I like change and I love learning. I said, okay, well, here's change and we're going to love learning how to do this. So I'm glad you're in that mode. So let's look at what's going on. Now, HireVue, which is pretty popular. We'll talk a little bit about it later, but they had a 24% increase. Naukri quadrupled its customers. VidRecruiter doubled its staff. So it's really growing. So there's all kinds of software pieces out there to do this kind of thing, but it's really growing. And it's predicted that we're still going to do a lot of video interviews, even though we could meet face-to-face more. So I think it's going to be a lot more video and less face-to-face, particularly in the screening area. They want to do screening. So I think that'll be huge. So what do employers see? Why do they like this thing? And they say, well, it's really efficient for us. So let's be an interviewer, let's be a company, let's be in their perspective, which is a good way to interview, is, okay, what is it? Well, interviews can be shorter. Oh, we have a tendency to talk too long. And so what they can do is they set a time limit that way we can't talk any longer than that. And that helps shorten it. They don't like hearing us that long. And they can do more candidates through the video process. And there's a lot of flexibility. You can generally you can choose to do your video interview at a time you choose. There usually is a time limit on accomplishing that. And then they can go back and look at it, and they can have whoever they want look at it. So they don't have to get together. And it's really hard today in the business world to get 3 people or 4 people together for a meeting. And so interviewing is one of the last items on the to-do list because we're too busy doing crisis management and crisis tasks because we didn't hire the person that would help us get out of that mess in the first place. So A lot of stuff's going on, and anything can delay an interview. Anything can delay the hiring process. It's not management by walking around now. It's crisis management. There's always stuff going and fills our day. We got to pay attention to those. So one of the nice things is I can look at it again. I can rewatch it, and I can also take each person, same set of questions, and compare side by side as to how they respond. So they see it really as a fair way to really screen the candidates. Now that's their perspective. Now, do we think it's fair? Not as much as they think it's fair. It's a little bit different on us because now we have to learn how to be TV personalities and learn how to look in the camera. Even looking into the camera is not easy. I don't enjoy looking into the camera. I would really like to look at faces and have that connection and contact like we mentioned some of the challenges were. And now I have to look into a mechanical device and act like I'm talking to somebody. So that takes some practice and some learning to do. And I'm still working on that as I speak. And they use some different judging methods. And so some watch all the videos and some use artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is growing. So we already use artificial intelligence in job search. It's called the applicant tracking system. They enter keywords and then we match through artificial matching and comes out with the keyword match and says, okay, we'll give you a call, we'll match you. Well, only 2% of those applications get responded to. It's a very slow way to try to get a job. So if you're spending all your time trying to match keywords and get somebody to find you, I would suggest you reduce the amount of time doing that and put more time in the networking area, but that's another topic. So one of the things that AI can do is they look at how we say, what we say. They're still looking at words, and then our gestures, okay? And some look at the facial micro expressions, which has got some definite concerns about that out there in the marketplace. And I'll talk about that with however you. Some experts think that these fairness and privacy and bias and all that is really an issue and a problem and can be incorrect. Of course, those who use it say, oh, it's wonderful, it does good things. But they do the same thing. They look up and say, what's the basis? What are we looking for? Then they insert that into the system, and then they use that for the criteria to judge us. And so whatever they put in is biased as well as doing it any other way. But let's take a look at Amazon for a second. Would you believe they've got about 1,300,000 employees worldwide? And that doesn't count the thousands of seasonal and contract workers that they have. They hired 500,000 people in 2020. That's 1,300 a day. Right now, and I went out on their website, and as of the 20th, they have 53,096 open positions in 90 categories. And as an example for the categories, I hit the wrong button. Hang on a second. I'll get that back. Here's an example. So I know this is kind of hard to read, but that figure right there, and I can't even read it, says 14,228 open positions in software development alone. So here's a sample of their categories. So they've got a huge number of open positions. So there was some stuff out there on the web where Beth Galetti was interviewed, and she's the Senior VP of Human Resources, and said, well, for our corporate jobs, where we go through a full interview process, we had to pivot literally overnight to virtual interviews. You just can't hire that many people on face-to-face interviews anymore. You have to have some kind of help to go through that process and grow. So they conducted over 200,000 virtual interviews in the past year. So here's a large company with a lot of growth experiencing this. And so of course they're going to turn to something like this to try to help them screen out candidates and select people. So here's the challenges that I think we face that some of you mentioned. One of them is I haven't found anybody yet that's really thrilled about doing one. And they're really excited. So I can't wait to do my video interview. It's so much fun and I enjoy it. I like it so much. So I don't think many of us really like them. Well, we gotta work to change that mindset, because we got to get to the point where we look forward and enjoy doing them. And so practicing and helping is going to get us to that point. And we're not really used to working in front of a camera. I remember several years ago, I was working for a company called EDS, and it was an outsourcing IT company. General Motors bought us, and they wanted us to do all their outsourcing. And I was in leadership development at the time. And so they said, well, let's create some videos of some things about leadership so we can send it out to these 3,000 managers in IT and help acclimate them to the style and the ways that EDS, because they were all going to transfer into EDS. So we spent a day and a guy came out and he gave us teaching, and after 8 hours we scrapped the whole thing because we were terrible. It was just lousy. So forget that idea. It's not going to happen. We could not look into the camera. We would look. It was so funny. I look back on it and I said, I wish I had that video so I could show everybody and said, this is what I look like doing videos. Everybody would get a good laugh. And so it's kind of awkward for us. We feel awkward in doing it. And it's not easy to present ourselves effectively when we're not person to person. We're limited in that. And so I'm not sure that I'm presenting myself. You don't see some of the gestures that I do, depending on my position and how I look, you know, what's in the scene with the video that you see of me. For example, you see me, I mean, some of us are just ahead and we're real close and we just get a head up. I suggest maybe we back up a little bit so you can see some more. In case if I wave my hands, you might see a few fingers missed. So anyway, we might feel that we present the wrong way. And of course, it's impersonal when you're not having a person in front of you. And it's difficult to make that connection or build a rapport with someone just talking to a machine. Well, that's the problem. We're not talking to a machine. We're talking to a person through a machine. So that's the mindset. We've got to look at that camera and say, I am talking to a person. And that's what I have to be thinking as I'm talking. So what can we do prior to an interview over video? Well, same thing you do for any interview. So this is a little interviewing stuff. You have to go through some process to be really effective in an interview. You really know ourselves. What are we like? What do we enjoy doing? What are our strengths? What's the kind of job we would really prefer? Some of us are at a crossroads. As we are now in transition, we have the opportunity to change things. We may change jobs. We may change industries. We may change careers. We have some other opportunities and other ways that we might go. So we have to make a decision and make a focus, because until you have a focus on a direction in a job, an industry or a company or something like that, how are you going to achieve anything? You can go any direction you want. It doesn't really matter. So that's first. And then you got to get all these marketing materials together. You got to fight with LinkedIn and the resume. I really strongly suggest bios. Biographies are good to help tools for networking. So you got to get all these marketing materials ready. They have to be consistent. And if you're on any Facebook or some of the social medias, you got to be consistent with that. So there's a lot of work, a lot of things to be done. But once that is all done, you have focus. Now you can work on how you would express that and deliver that. Until you get that focus, though, it's very, very difficult to do. So it was great to have target companies, know companies that you're looking for, so that you can say, all right, I'm going to spend my time on the companies I want to work for, not the ones that I don't know whether I want to work for them or not. So I want to do some informational interviews and research. I strongly recommend that you look up and vet companies based on culture. If it's not a culture fit, the rest of it really doesn't matter, for example. So we would like to find that. So I'd like to have that. So I know that when I'm doing a video interview, I'm looking at a company that I want to work for. I'm looking at a job that I want to do. All those things are in my mindset. It's kind of hard to do an exploratory interview over video. However, we still have to do some of those things. We may not have very much information. We may not have very much time to do that. You can go back and look at session 1. I think it's limited time in that session, how to prepare for one limited time. But nonetheless, if we get that chance to do some research, and I have that preparation, and if I've done some practicing interviews, just basically, then okay, now I think I can handle the video part. So I've got that part, because if you don't have that, it doesn't help you a whole much with the video side. So let's just look at the video part now specifically. So there's different ways. Many of them are remote. So you'll be at wherever you want to be, connected to the internet. Sometimes you go in office and they'll have some remote capability there, some kind of a connection. Or perhaps it's international or something like that. But it's often simply remote one way or the other. There's the live interviews and there's the pre-recorded interviews. The live interviews can be one way, as we've already discussed. They can be two-way. And then there's the pre-recorded, which is becoming more popular, particularly in screening. And then the devices, okay? Well, you can use a lot of different devices today. You can use your computer, a tablet, a smartphone. All you have to have is the correct software on your device so that you can have the video. Then let's look at all this conferencing software. I got VidCruiter, SmartHire, My Interview, HireView, Interview Stream, RecWrite, Zoom, and there's about 400 plus more. We use EasyHire as an example, donated to us by the EasyHire people to allow us, give us licenses to use to help job seekers with practicing video interviews. So let me ask you this question. What is the number one mistake that we make in a video interview? What do you think? You can speak, you can chat, whichever.
Bad mouthing the last job.
The biggest single one comes with you have to figure out what your camera is pointing at and what's, and look at the camera. Like I just had to flip the screen over to the one that's in front of the camera because I realized I was sitting here looking like this. But that's your presentation can be as basic as where's your equipment at versus where are you sitting.
Anita, was that you that said, I missed some words that you said earlier.
Basically making sure that you're looking at who you're talking to.
Right.
And because I had to move my image. Usually I have it on my big screen over here, but I just moved it back over in front by the camera for the reason of looking at people as opposed to looking at the screen trying to see what they're saying or what they're doing.
And there's an example of what can happen during an interview because I was trying to say Anita, it didn't come across. And so with that communication, there's a lag sometimes in the communication and we don't hear each other. So if you don't pause. So go ahead, Anita.
Thank you, Walt. I heard you, and what I said was actually not the right answer to your question. So I'll take that back. I was just talking about interviews in general, and I didn't miss the word video interviews.
Well, most answers are going to be correct, but it might not be the top answer. So there's still going to be some
But
mistakes.
I was just saying in general about video, about interviews, to not badmouth the previous job.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
That's
That's
not
in any interview. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I say it is. I'm going to say it's distraction. Anything that's a distraction. All right. A little bit distraction. And why? All right. Inhibits the listening by the interviewer. So just the way I put that slide together is distracting to you. All right. Say, watching the letters. Well, you're watching them. You're not reading them. You're watching what it does. And then you're waiting for the daggum thing to stop spinning so you can read. So it's a distraction. And so lots of things can cause distractions. And so that's one of the things we want to really pay attention to. I can remember one, they were having a video interview and as the candidate was looking, the panel that he was looking started laughing a little bit and chuckling. And they said, well, what is it? He said, well, your wife just walked behind you and she wasn't wearing anything. And so that was a distraction in the interview. So I don't know whether she got hired or not, but nonetheless, you have to worry about a little bit about distractions. The magician uses distraction as a tool for his magic or her magic, right? Our eyes, if we move, if something moves, our eyes will immediately dart to it and they'll look at it. So if there's something going on with us to distract, then we'll start focusing on the distraction instead of the interview. So we want to avoid distractions. And so we'll talk a little bit about that too. So we're going to do some online stuff. We got to prepare some things ahead of time to make sure that online is going to be effective. So now we're looking at technology. So we want to test our hardware and software. We want to test our cameras. So there's internal cameras, there's external cameras. You can buy webcams and put them on. You can use headsets. My question to you is, if you were the interviewer, would a headset distract you from a candidate? Or how about an earbud? Would that distract you? Which one would you prefer? And I would say it depends on your age. That's a little bit of an overstatement, but today, technology-wise, earbuds are pretty popular. So you can buy earbuds that have the microphone and hearing in them at the same time, or you can use the headset. But you want to make sure that that is all effective and it works well. Of course, you want to do your internet connection. So speedtest.net is a good place to go look. And I'm talking about upload speed more than download speed. If you know anything about speeds of internets and things like that, there's a download and an upload. Upload is always slower than download. You can download pretty rapidly, but you want to have something that has a good upload speed to it. And of course, you've got to be familiar with the interview software. So there's different kinds, and you'll have generally opportunities to get familiar with that, learn how to navigate it. It's really sad sometimes when, as one person got confused and said, "Gee, I don't like that answer. I want to answer it again," but she hit the wrong button and it sent the wrong answer because she wasn't practiced well enough to use the navigation to understand which way it would do, so that she could. This particular software allowed you to erase your answer and answer it again. And since I've had 2 presentations where the power in my PC started dying, I've added number E or the letter E to say, be sure you're plugged in and have sufficient power. I'm just talking away, and all of a sudden this thing comes up and says, I'm about to die if you don't plug in. And so I have to interrupt myself and go plug my computer in. So I had to add that one from experience of myself. Now, if you happen to be using Zoom, just give you an example. In the settings for audio, there's some audio settings that'll come up and it'll say you can test your speaker and you can test your microphone. And that's pretty good to do. And by the way, and I added this because sometimes people say, if you want to talk, just press the space bar so you can speak. Well, that does not work unless you've gone into settings and changed that little thing to say, yes, allow the space bar to turn my video or my audio on and off. So you can test that through Zoom. So you can use Zoom to test your equipment, even though you might use some different software to do that. That's the reason I gave you that. So we got to make sure that our internet connection is stable. If you have Ethernet connections, and so I have a router, it's connected to my internet provider. And so I can get an Ethernet cable, and I can use my PC for the cable directly to the router. And now I'm not fighting for bandwidth. For those of you not familiar with the term bandwidth, it's kind of like turning on all your spigots, all your faucets in your home at one time. And that makes all of them slower. Then if you turn them all off, that makes one of them faster. And that's the same thing that happens with bandwidth over the Wi-Fi signals. So kill all the other Wi-Fi devices. Now, some homes have a tremendous amount of Wi-Fi installed, so you can turn on kitchen lights and turn off this and do this, and all that's over Wi-Fi, and it uses bandwidth to accomplish that. Or if you've got iPads and iPhones and you got 4 iPhones in the house and all of them are on, those things take up bandwidth. So this is the time when you want to gather all the iPhones, turn them all off, put the kids in the closet, put the dog outside, so you don't have all these things going on to interfere with you as you're going through your video interview. So with your particular, if you're using like a PC or, I often forget that on my iPhone that I have to close all these open windows. I mean, it's eating up space and eating up time. There's things going on that some of them we don't like. They know where I am. They know where I'm going before I do. And that kind of worries me a little bit. But all that stuff is going on in the background. So if the more you turn off, then the more bandwidth you have for your interview. And that makes things a lot simpler. If you see your picture freezing or your voice, your audio stops for a little bit, then you're having bandwidth problems. That's a primary reason. So start turning off all those other devices. Close the windows and things like that. So where do you put the camera? Well, I look at some of you, and some of you are looking down at me. Some of you are looking up at me. Some of you, I see your ceiling. Some of you are, it's all different things with the background. And so I want to position this, at least for me. So as I see somebody making corrections out there, and that's fine, you go ahead, because this is a great place to practice this stuff. So I like to have an eye level so that I'm not looking down. I can be looking slightly up or something like that. Now in Zoom, I can do a little side-by-side mode, and I can put somebody's picture right below my camera, which I often do. And then if I'm looking at that person, you can't tell the difference between me looking at the camera and that person. Then I get to talk to somebody. I'll pick out a person, and that's who I'm talking to. So that's a little tip that helps me do that. But always keep it steady, have support. So if you're using your phone or iPad or something like that, you don't want things shaking. That's just another distraction. Now, here's the tough part: the quiet, private, well-lit place, free from possible interruptions and distractions. All right. So there's an easy sentence to say. Now, I live in an apartment. It's almost impossible for me to find a good background for that. And I'll do a little thing with you on backgrounds. But we do need a quiet, private place. All right. Quiet. We don't want noise. We don't anything else going on. People walking around in the background, dogs barking, cats in our lap, have cats walk across the keyboard. All those kind of things. We want to make sure none of those things can happen because it's just a distraction. Dress professionally. Look like they do, or a little bit better. That's the common thing that you would do in a face-to-face. Well, I want to do the same thing on a video. And find out from the culture what really is appropriate to wear. I mean, if you're going to interview with Amazon, I won't think I would interview in a suit. All right. That culture is not a suit culture. If I'm interviewing with a bank, I might be wearing a suit. So find out what they wear. And also, if there's some things that kind of do messy things with video, some of these finer patterns, they start waving and making lines of darkness and all kinds of things going. So use some soft, solid colors and try to avoid patterns. So a nice soft color, a pastel color is not bad, or even a solid color is okay. Now, some of you wear glasses, and as you look at your screen, there is a glare that reflects on your screen. Now, you can tilt your screen a little bit to maybe help avoid that, or you can use a little bit different lighting. You can try to reduce on using dimming, something. But the glare on glasses where, I can hardly see anything, and now I can't even see your eyes. So that also can be a distraction. So you have to work a little bit with your glasses to say, okay, how can I really present myself so that people are looking at me? So I'm happen to be, I'm looking at Nita. I see a slight glare on your glasses, okay? And for our bass fishermen, you look fine. I don't see any glare on your glasses at all. And practice. I can't emphasize enough about practicing. So we practice interviews, and Mark and I, we push practice pretty hard to say, every practice you get better. I like Mark's phrase, practice early, practice often, don't wait. I'm surprised by the number of people who wait until the last minute to say, now I need some help. Well, I know we don't like to make mistakes in front of other people. We don't want to show that we don't know the answers to things and all that kind of stuff. And I say, well, if you really want to learn, put your learning hat on and let that overpower the other side of it. And just come do the best you can, enjoy the interview and learn. So your primary thing is to learn and do that. So one little tidbit of information. I do some coaching, these emergencies. I did one today. I got an interview tomorrow. Please help me out. So I'll give them a few tips with that. I'm sure Mark has those too. So I call those coaching sessions. And then there's interviewing sessions where interviews are actually. So yesterday, no, it was this morning. Yeah, this morning, I actually completed my 1,000th interview. So I've made the mark. So I can say I've done 1,000 of these. And guess what? I've heard 1,000 things over and over and over again. Most of them, it's a lot of people say, yeah, why do you think you would be a great person for this job? Because my background and experience fits the job. I was, oh, let me make you an offer. So I hear a lot of things over and over and over again. So that's why practice and feedback from people who are in the interviewing mode, in the hiring mode, have had that kind of experience, can give you great feedback as to how you come across. And of course, looking at yourself in the video and how you appear is good practice as well, because I look at myself and say, I got to work on that. It doesn't look as good as I want to. So let me go back to this. I'm going to show some video stuff. So if you can see me, see my video, you might be put it on speaker mode or something like that. I'm going to ask you to take a look at, let's see here. What do you think about that one? How about that one? Or that one? Or that one? If I was a professor in a college, that might be a pretty good one. How about that one? Let me put my astronaut helmet on, and I'm interviewing for an astronaut. I think having the stars in the background would be pretty good. Okay. How about this one? Somebody tell me what's wrong with this. Not Jeff.
The video is distracting.
The palm
I don't-
tree is wet.
Saying because I'm thinking about being at the beach. Right?
Too
So,
much
yeah.
movement.
The movement, all right? Then you know what the most often movement I see in video? Ceiling fans. I see fan blades rotating in the background, okay? Very, very, very distracting on the motion. So let me do a little, let me stop that. And let me get me back to my regular background.
That picture looks a little stiff.
Yeah, that's my artificial smile, not my natural smile. All right, so let's do a little poll. And so I picked out 4 backgrounds. And so one of them has Golden Gate, one of them has a lattice in the background, one is a home view, and one has the trees. And so you're an interviewer and you're interviewing me. Which one do you think is the better picture? And then there's E. Now, I politely said none of the above. I could have said, you need to continue working on it, Walt. So take a look at those and say, which one do I think would be a better representation of me to a hiring or into the interviewer's frame of mind? Okay, 2 people said none of the above. They said you still got to keep working on it. There's a dozen that say the gray lattice looks pretty good. The home scene is of a couple of people. Nobody likes the Golden Gate. Okay, well, that gives me some feedback to say, because as I'm working myself on improving myself, then I'm still working on backgrounds as to what might be an effective background. Now, there's an interview background, and then there's these Zoom meeting backgrounds, and they can be a little bit different, but for interviewing. So what am I saying to you with my different, there's a message in my background to you as to what I'm saying. So we want to find something, and if nothing else, get you a blank screen, put you something on the wall behind, so you don't have anything that will distract you. That one I showed you within the library. I don't know about you, but when I first saw that, when I was looking all over at what's in the background, all the books and all the stuff, I was interested in all that stuff. And so it was very, very distracting to me. Although if I was a professor trying to get a job at a university, that might be an appropriate background, all right? Because it shows that I am that kind of person. All right, so thank you for that. So let's take a look at HireVue, for example. I wanted to choose that as a artificial intelligence software. It's becoming popular, and they use a lot of artificial intelligence to screen candidates and determine whether you're going to make the next step or not, all right? And they claim it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's better than chocolate and all those kind of stuff. And I say, it's just great to help us. Well, today, hiring is such that if there's anything that, well, I can use to help me make a decision rather than going through all the process myself and make my own decision, I'll use it. I'll use it. So I'll use the applicant tracking system. I'll use all those methodologies. I'll do things because it just takes too much time to do a really good job face-to-face, person-to-person. So HireVue, they're looking at thousands of different traits, including demeanor, enthusiasm, word choice, tone, cadence, gestures, and posture. They're looking at all of those things to determine whether you should go on or not. I'll tell you why. Then they used to do facial analysis. Been a lot of negative press on facial analysis. So they announced that they have removed that. They were looking at micro expressions on your face as part of the message. And they've come out with a study that said that's really not predictive. So what we're going to use is they have increased their ability through what they call language analysis, language processing, and that's all this word choice, tone, cadence, gesture. They've increased that and said that's a much better predictor of success in the role. So they've dropped that. So that's good news because I don't know. There's a lot of different facial expressions we have. There's different cultures. There's men, there's women. I mean, it's so different. Plus, there's some problems with some of this. I'll talk about it in a second. So they look at the competencies and attributes and behaviors of the firm's best employees. That goes into the database. All right. And then they want to hire people like them. All right. So that builds the profile and given job description. Different parameters are set for each industry and company. But behavior is only included if it's shown to be statistically linked to job performance for that role. So I don't know all the background and research and things they've done to say, here's an algorithm that shows this type of behavior that says that matches the performance for this particular job. And you'll either end up in the top third, middle, or bottom third in this particular system. But system bias can exist if the data bias contains bias. Well, that's what they say. That's what other people say about AI systems. But I would say that system bias does exist. One company ditched HireVue because it started saying that only men were passing to the next step. And I said, well, whatever we put in there is wrong because it's not selecting the people, the candidates we want. So they just ditched the whole thing. So some people use it, brave about it. Some people say, no, I'm not using it. And firms likely lean on it more than they like to admit. So how to take a HireVue interview? Well, this is what they say. Doing your preparation, make sure you're dressed, all right? Make sure you look into the camera, be aware of your lighting, position, and background, all right? That's a lot of words. I mean, a few words that says a lot of things. For lighting, I've got 2 lamps on each side of me, up a little high, and you can see 2 shadows on my face. If I put the hands in the light. And so I've got no shadows on my face and I'm lit up, all right? The picture in the background is actually, it is a picture. It is my apartment. But I use that and say, okay, let me try this one out for a while. So you want to log in early because it's going to test system. Make sure you have a microphone, make sure you have speakers and all the system requirements. And then it checks, after checking those things out, it lets you practice. And they themselves say, we can't emphasize the importance of using the practice questions. They want you to get familiar and feel comfortable and at ease going through the practice. And you can practice a lot. You can keep practicing going through it. They want you to. The reason they want you to practice is because it helps them. It's kind of like I was talking to the head nurse at Texas Health Resources. And they use behavioral interviewing, STAR story questions, if you've heard of them. Tell me about a time when you give me an example of. And they were sending out little leaflets or documents with their hiring information to say, we're going to ask you questions like this and answer them in this format. Give me the situation, the task, action, the result in that format. So why do you do that? So it's because we're so tired of people not being able to answer our questions. They don't know how to answer them. So we're going to try to teach them to do that. Same thing here. We want to teach you to use the system to practice and get comfortable and get familiar with it so that you're going to come across a little better. They are tired of seeing first-timers not being able to function very well. That's not helping them choose people. So practice. And while you're practicing, you can look at your settings and make sure your lighting, your background, your sound and video all copacetic. Then you can play your practice recording and practice as you get comfortable. Then they give you like 30 seconds for a question and up to 3 minutes to answer, and then click and you're done, and away it goes. So what should we do during the video interview? One of the things that I suggest in a real interview when you go face-to-face is that you have a questions list prepared and you put it out on the table for them to see that you have a prepared questions list. The idea is that interviewers see that you're prepared, you've done some research, you know what you want to ask, you want to do, and that's a positive thing. So when I'm online, I say, I'd like to show you that, hey, I have some question list here that I want to show you that I have to ask you, and this is what it looks like. Oh, you don't have any questions, huh? And so the document is not going to come out when there's a background. So, yeah. All right, what should we do during the video interview? Log in early. Always be a little bit early. I would suggest that you log in anytime you're on a Zoom meeting, log in a little bit early. Use your Zoom meetings today, like you're attending today, to practice your background, practice your equipment, all the things we can do now. This is something, I mean, I see a lot of people that just stop their video. And there's some reasons for that. I'm not complaining or criticizing, but it is an opportunity for us to say, well, let me put my video on there, and I might send out a little chat to somebody towards the end of the meeting, after the meetings. I would say, hey, what do you think of my background? And see, maybe ask a few people to give that some information to you, see what it's like. Always be on time. It's critical. They can be late, it's fine. They can do anything they want. They get all the rules. They get to ask all the information. We have to tell them everything. They don't have to tell us anything. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But be sure that you log in early. Smiling is probably the best thing that we can do to show some kind of rapport and building something and showing ourselves as open, trusting. All that kind of thing comes through a smile. But it's not a technique. It has to come from within. So if you've heard my discussion about that and Jeff showing his smiley faces, yeah, you can put that around your camera and mount that up there so it reminds you to smile. I've been practicing smiling since 1971. I still don't do it enough, but smiling. So if you are enthused about the job, enthused about the company, excited, have some interest in the job, if you don't have to jump on the table and dance, but you're really interested in the job, you will naturally show gestures and facial expressions and things like that that represent smiling and energy and those kind of things. So it comes from within. So it's your mindset. So smiling is important, particularly in your greeting. Generally, everybody smiles in a greeting and then they kind of disappear. That's kind of me. I'll smile. Oh yeah, I got to smile. So remembering to smile. So you practice smiling. All right, practice smiling. So here's a hard one. It's simple, but it's a hard one. That's really to look into the camera when you're speaking. Now, if I want to look over here and I can see Jeff and I can see Richard and I can see Mark and I'm looking there, so I'm talking to Jeff, this is what it looks like, all right? Well, I'm not making eye contact with you. So I got to go back to that camera and look right straight into that camera's eye. And so when I'm talking, I'm looking at the camera. Now, when they're talking, I get to look at them, all right? So I can take my eyes off. Also, you don't have to have 100% continual eye contact or looking into the camera. You're allowed to think. Sometimes we don't practice that. We don't practice the pause, but we're allowed to think. And thinking kind of takes our mind off of looking at people. And almost naturally, our body will, once we start thinking about something, we will look away. And we'll not focus on anything because we're thinking. Sometimes our eyes will wander because we're trying to put together. That's a natural body reaction that you're not going to be able to stop, nor should we. But don't talk if you're thinking, right? Wait until you finish thinking before you start speaking. But you can look at them and get some idea and reaction with them. So the general rule is when speaking, looking at the camera, when they're talking, you can look at them. Keep your good posture, all right? It says lean in slightly. Well, lean in slightly is a result of how you speak. It's not, again, a technique. I almost want to remove that from the slide because then I want everybody to lean in slightly. Well, did you get something out of that? Did that give you a thrill? Because I leaned in? No, didn't really do anything, right? But when you're truly interested, you want to talk to somebody, you will kind of, you'll just kind of do this because that's what you're talking about. You're getting a little bit closer. All right. Always be authentic. That doesn't matter what kind of interview it is. Always be authentic and display genuine energy and interest. Nodding is going to help. All right. I was talking with person her grandchild just graduated from the 3rd grade and they stopped wearing masks, and teachers didn't recognize who they were. And so that's kind of sad. I'm laughing at it, but it's really kind of sad. And so here, if we nod once in a while and give them some visual cues that we're hearing what they're saying, we like what they're saying, that's a good one. I even say gestures, and I sometimes try to put my hands out. I like to put myself away from a little bit away from it and not put myself real close so that I'm looking like this. I give myself a little bit more of a body posture for you to look at. All right. that might help. Deliver a statement of enthusiasm. That doesn't matter whether it's video or not, but in the beginning, showing your enthusiasm for the job or interest in the job is really key. So that opening statement, Jeff and Mark and I were able to look at some sample videos from Easy Hire and listen to a few people answering them. Jeff, I'll let you tell your own story of what you thought about listening to those answers.
Well, they were horrible. They were unwatchable. After about 10 seconds, you went, okay, next, because it was just like, it wasn't worth, I mean, the clothes, the angle, the camera, their background. You got to give people a reason to want to listen to you. And if you have any kind of distraction in the background, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So if you put yourself in the seat of the interviewer, I can remember one of the workshops that I did, and I video people in the workshops before we were doing face-to-face. And a guy came into the PIT crew, it happened to be a PIT crew meeting. And he said, well, I took Walt's workshop and I looked at the video and I wouldn't hire that guy for anything. No way. He didn't like what. So we need to know and practice and see how we appear to others so that we can fix that, all right, and correct that. And it comes from your mindset. The more comfortable you are, the more prepared you are, the more comfortable you can be, and then you can start engaging and talking and doing that. But if you're just praying you can answer questions, your mindset is not going to be one of less. It just shows anxiety, it shows concern and stress and all that sort of thing. So deliver that statement. Be a different person than most people when you greet them, and pause before speaking. Why? Because you want to form a nice, clear, concise response. Interviewers would rather you stop and think and deliver a nice, clear, concise response than you just start talking, trying to figure out what the answer is. But online, it also helps because we experienced that earlier, where we were talking over each other and the right message didn't get across. So we want to pause to make sure that the technology is allowed to communicate effectively over the internet. So we might cut out words. Avoid touching our face. This is a pretty popular thing to do. It's one that we don't realize that we're doing. But if I touch my face, if I do something, it's very, very noticeable and it's very, very distracting. So I can remember there's been times when the end of my nose was itching fiercely. And I just wanted to scratch it. So I scratched it, and then I came back and said, okay, we'll continue. Well, that doesn't work either. But be cognizant. And that's what video practicing will help you do. You can see you doing some things that you don't really want to do. So in summary and finally, we are not talking to a machine. That's our mindset. Well, I'm talking to a camera. I'm thinking the wrong thing. I'm talking to a person. So as we go through this, we have to imagine that we are talking to a person and speak and do it that way. Now, if you've got that kind of mindset, you're way ahead of the rest of the crew, because you will be looking at that camera. You'll be interested in saying, you'll be talking with your genuine, authentic way. You are doing some gestures. You'll be smiling when you talk. So even if it's one way or whatever it is, you want to come across so that when they look at it, it's going to be so different than what other people do that you're way ahead of the game. All right. Other questions?
Can you take a drink while on a video interview in case your mouth is dry?
Sure.
I mean, a lot of places are going to offer you a cup of water or a bottle
Well,
of water.
what you might want to say is, give me a break a second. My mouth's getting dry. Let me take a little sip and announce that and say it and do it and kind of get permission to do it. They often will let you do it inside of a regular interview. You can do it here, but it can be distracting. So the way to avoid the distraction is, my mouth's kind of dry. Give me a second to take a sip. Then you get permission to do that. You take your sip, then you go on.
Yeah, Charles, a good idea.
Yeah, Kathy said I had an interviewer look to the side the entire time of the video. Would it have been rude to ask if they were looking at my resume or me? Well, I'm looking to the side because my second monitor is where my chat is right now. So I wouldn't assume just because they're looking to the side, they could be looking at you on their second monitor because their camera was over here, but their monitor's over here. I mean, you could go move, I could go move my camera so it's facing over here, but it's just how that setup is. So you never know what they're looking at when they're off to the side. It's very difficult.
I put that in the category of correcting the interviewer. There is a time to correct the interviewer, and that's after you're hired. In the meantime, you're on their agenda, you're doing it their way. And so if it bothers you that they're not looking at you, then you should be looking at the camera anyway. You shouldn't be noticing that they're looking the other way. But anyway, yeah, just let it go. Just let it go and adapt to it. Say, okay, I'll look into the camera, I'll do my best.
Couple of things about the size of your head. So this what I've got set up here is I'm not an expert on this, but this is what I've been told is you want a little space up here at the top. Okay, and that's about the right size. So Jeff's got his, he's a little farther out, but little space at the top of the head. You don't want your head cut off, you don't need too much space. So that's what I've heard. The other thing I want to just mention, and Walt said it, but let me reinforce it. Audio problems are aggravating. I gotta say, it's more than distracting, it's aggravating when you're the interviewer. So if you have to wear earbuds or if you have to wear over-the-ear headphones with a boom because you tend to move your head, you turn from side to side and that'll cause the audio to fade, then go ahead and do it. Okay, you want to be able to communicate effectively. And if that's blocked somehow, it's bad. It's just bad. Bad for your prospects.
All right, that's our presentation from Mark and Walt. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to unmute your mic and ask away. Walt is with us on the chat, so we can talk more about that. Any questions, comments? Oh, hold on. Let's see, I got you muted. Let me allow you to mute yourself. There you go. Now you can unmute your mic. Sorry about that.
I wasn't saying anything anyway. I was just mouthing.
Just trying to confuse us all, huh?
There was a comment about blurring. When this video was made, blurring was not a Zoom option, but that's a good option to have some sort of background, not a virtual background, but a real background, and then use that blurring option. That's been, I think, quite effective. So you can use blurring these days.
How's my background? How's my background? Does that look okay?
I don't know. I'm thirsty.
If you want to be a bartender, it's okay.
Is this one better? Or maybe this one?
No.
And another thing, since this, HireVue's backed off of some of their AI stuff that they do. Whatever you put in a database is going to be biased. And so if you put in a person who acts this way, my feeling was, why don't you just clone people? Because that's basically what they're trying to do by using that. So they backed off some of their AI things inside of their software. But they're still going to look at us. And if we don't look good on TV, that's another reason not to hire us.
Right.
And if HireVue tells you, this is what you ought to do, this is what you ought to practice, this ought to be your background, that's all your stuff, and then yours doesn't look like that, and we gave you the opportunity and told you all of that, and you didn't do it, you're not going to be hired.
Robert asked a question, is a ring light recommended or better to find natural lighting?
I tried a ring light, and it didn't work well for me. And so if anybody wants a ring light, let me know. But I have still been playing around with lighting, but some people use it very successfully. So I keep trying different things. I've got lamps right now. I've tried 40-watt bulbs, 60-watt bulbs, soft white, incandescent. I mean, all the different types of things to say what's the best kind of lighting. And I'm still would like to have a little bit better lighting than I actually have now. So it kind of works out to how does it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to go buy anything personally. I think, you know, you go around the house, you probably have a couple lamps you're not using. I have a lamp sitting right over here this way. On this side, I have natural light coming in through windows. If it's a cloudy day, I've got another lamp sitting over here that I can turn on. So, you know, you probably don't need to buy ring lamps and stuff. And plus, lamps have shades, and shades help diffuse the light and make it a little bit softer. You know, you just want to make sure you don't have an overhead light coming straight down on you. You know, we've all had the, you know, light down like this way. So, you know, you don't want the light to be on your head coming straight down because it gives you funny shadows. So if you can get some, you know, at eye level, same eye level as your camera, get a couple lamps. That's what tends to work the best.
Someone also made a comment about funny things going on around your head. You might have noticed in the video, there were some little bright images around the outline of my head. I finally figured that out one day, and it's from a light source behind me. It's actually sliding glass doors. And so I closed those off and that disappeared. Now, my problem is I live in an apartment and there is no source of light. I mean, my apartment faces to the north, and so I don't get any light coming in that way. Well, I'll back up. There is a source of light in the bedroom, but I'm not going to set up in the bedroom. So I don't, if you have a natural light source, that's going to be your best lighting.
Somebody put in the chat window, will we get the link to watch this again? Yeah, I'll tell you about how to get that in just a couple minutes. Any other questions from anybody? Questions, comments, suggestions? You know, I would hope by now, you know, think about this. Back when we started COVID, people didn't have cameras. They weren't sure how to use their laptops. They weren't sure how to do the kinds of things we're doing now. Hopefully now, after the last couple of years, we've gotten a lot better and a lot more experience on how to do Zoom calls, team meetings, and to be able to participate and how to look better than we normally do. So hopefully this was more of a refresher than, you know, learning a lot of new things. But, you know, the important things I think that, you know, Walt talked about earlier was you've got to make sure you've got a good internet connection, turn off all the things that aren't necessary when you're doing your interview, making sure you've got battery, you know, good power for your laptop so your laptop doesn't die. You know, you don't want to use your phone just because it's too unstable. You know, it's not stable enough to do an interview. So, you know, just be prepared, being prepared. And if you need to practice, that's what we're here to do. Schedule practice interview, and you can get that. And what's one of the things the PIC crew will talk about is after your interview is that, you know, your lighting was really funky, or, you know, we really couldn't see you very well, or you had a bright light coming right down on your head. I mean, they'll, beside talking about your interviewing skills, they will also talk about, you know, how you presented yourself during the interview. So schedule yourself a practice interview. Anybody else? Anything else? All right, let me share a few slides and we will get out of here today. Career FW Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us. Tomorrow, being the 4th Thursday of the month, we'll be talking about networking strategies to manage your career. That's with Terry Gofarb. I heard her present about a year ago, and we've got her, you know, reached out to her, and it's a really great presentation, and she's got some really great stories. You'll get to hear stories about her going to Walt Disney's house. And as a kid, you know, Walt was just a nice little guy, and, you know, and everything going on about networking and how she became a great networker. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting, the psychological impact of being unemployed. Being unemployed is hard. It's stressful. Stressful on you. It's stressful on your significant other. It's hard. I mean, quite frankly, I think everybody would prefer to just be working and not having to look for a job. So we're going to talk about that this Friday with Dr. Roseanne Christian, who's a PhD. So she'll share her thoughts about that. Next Tuesday for LinkedIn Tuesdays, Kurt Vondermatter, a retained search consultant, will be with us to talk about how he uses LinkedIn, how he looks for you He will show us the recruiting package, the full-blown recruiting package that he pays big bucks for every year, so that he can go and find you. So join us next Tuesday at 1. And then next Wednesday, for Interviewing Wednesday, we'll be doing session number 5, analyzing the job description, what you need to know about job descriptions. So join us next Wednesday for Interviewing Wednesday. For the interviewing series, we've got a 13-part workshop. These were all on the Career USA YouTube channel. We did lesson 4 today. We'll do lesson 5 next week. They're broken down into a couple different parts. The first 5 lessons are all about what do you do before the interview? How do you prepare for the interview? The next 5 lessons are what do you do during the interview? And we'll get to those later this year. And then the last 3 sessions are some advanced topics, and especially the last one, avoiding interview crashes, is always a very interesting topic because you know what you should do, but you tend to do these things. And Mark and Walt will sort of share what they see interviewers doing over and over and over again. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook every time. If you follow us on Facebook, when we go live, you'll get your phone will give you a little buzz. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, every time we post a new video, you'll find out about the new video. On the Career USA YouTube channel, this is where this video will be located. It'll take a couple hours to get this uploaded to YouTube, but once it's there, just go to playlist where the red arrow is, and then down at the bottom, click on where the green arrow is, where it says view full playlist. And then up will come a list of all the different titles and topics and dates. The most current one should be at the top. And you can go back and watch any of these at your leisure. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops and you'd like to join the Career USA mailing list, you're welcome to do so. Career USA, the + subscribe at groups.io. You'll never be spammed, but what you will get is the topic of the day, the title of our topic, and then most importantly, the Zoom link. So that way you can grab your lunch, grab your afternoon coffee, grab your breakfast on Friday morning, and just open the email and be able to join our session. Please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. All of our speakers are volunteers. Walt, Mark, Ron, we're all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everything I've done over the last 14 years has just been to help you land your next great opportunity. So thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. Walt, thank you for the presentation. Ron, thanks for being with us. And for everybody else, have a great Wednesday, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
Good day, guys.